I see fame as a business. But I didn't care whether you was a celebrity or whether you was high net worth or whether you was royalty. I wanted to get paid. I made a lot of money, met a lot of people, I've been all over the world.
So who have you looked after?
Kendall Jenner, Naomi Campbell, Dizzy Rascal, Rita. I mean, you're not going to get a bigger celebrity to work for than Michael Jackson. We got him round the back and took him into a sort of a safe room, if you like. And we had a security guard on each end of the road. It's almost impossible to do probably what we did back then, because it only takes one person to see him through a window, take a picture, and that's it. The whole world knows instantly. If someone attacks, and that's when you realise it's too late. Sometimes it doesn't matter how much protection you have out, you get that one day where, how's that even happened?
Liam Payne, it feels like there was a lack of protection there.
Certainly his long-term mental health was in question. If he had more people around him, could they have stopped it? They don't understand that if you're not making money from it, or if you don't do something with it, that fame goes within 6 months. It's just a day's work for me. You look after yourself as much as you do the person you're looking after, but you know there's a good chance you're going to get killed.
Simon, thank you. Thank you for being here.
It's all right, you're welcome.
Here's the question. What's it like looking after the safety of important people?
Obviously, I looked after Michael Jackson many years ago, and there was about 5 or 6 of us on that job.
Yeah.
So, although it's a stressful job, not as stressful as the others, all the others I've been with, I've been on my own.
Yeah, yeah.
So that makes the whole job, it's a totally different thing, really. So, yeah, it just depends on how many people you got with you. But when you're on your own, it's very stressful.
What's the process for something like that? If you're on the road with someone, how far out are you planning, and what sort of stuff are you looking for?
You plan as far ahead as you can, as you possibly can. And even when you plan things, obviously it doesn't always go right. But from picking someone up from an airport to doing the visit for 4 or 5 days to dropping them back to the airport, by and large, already in your head, you've already got some sort of overview of the whole 5 days. And then you break it down into days, and then you break it down into hours.
Yeah.
So the first thing I'd look at, obviously, is the transfer from the airport to the hotel, and then what we got on for the rest of the day. I'd look at which ways we can go. I'd look at the traffic, the timing, the roadworks.
That's like a safety thing of like being stuck in a place for a long time.
It's more, well, that's not helpful. Yeah. So you don't want to be stuck in temporary lights for half an hour.
Yeah, yeah.
But also you will get asked, how long do you think it'd be to the hotel?
Yeah.
And although we're not always correct, because London's quite difficult now,
increasingly,
we still try and get it fairly right. And there's only roadworks on the way, and we've got no choice. You can also warn them of that when you get inside. It's going to take a bit longer today because we're going to be static for maybe 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So you can add all that in. So we try to give as much info and manage expectations as possible.
I suppose it's probably a nicer thing now than it was 10 or 15 years ago. You could sit watching something and go, just put on a bit of Netflix for an hour.
Yeah, exactly. There's more to do now. Yeah, that's for sure.
Twiddling your thumbs.
But if you tell people as well and they're prepared for it, there's not a lot you can do about it. But.
Yeah, yeah. So is some of what people are sort of having you in their team for, so to speak, or having you take that section, is it the logistical planning of how we get from A to B and get it? And also, I suppose, with big name people, some of it is getting them into somewhere, like sort of the logistics of where you go and how you avoid certain eyes and those sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, all those things are providing security. Yeah. It's all part of providing security, and that's what we're doing. So it's not just physical protection. You're making sure that you go the right way, you hit all the times, you get to people to their places they need to be on time, especially if they're on the catwalk or they're singing or something, or it's an actor who's got to do something. So you've got to make sure you hit all the timings right. You try not to get people there too early. You don't want to get people there too late. You don't want to drop people off, pick people off, where there's lots of press, paparazzi or public. Depending on what you're doing. Obviously, if you're on a red carpet event, that all changes.
Yeah.
So you have to take all that into consideration, as long as what you're wearing for the day. If you're picking up, you might be all right in kind of what I'm wearing today, jeans and a polo shirt. If you're going to a red carpet event, you're going to want a black suit, maybe black tie. And you have to look at that the whole day's itinerary to see what you need to fit.
It's like a gun in your pocket. Kind of.
Exactly. No,
it's interesting to me because I was thinking about it on the way here, there seems to be a threshold with which people shift from not needing security to needing security. And it's curious as to what that is. You see pictures of people like Paul McCartney on the tube or something. And I suppose my experience of things, I mean, I was in a restaurant a couple of days ago and Brian May was just sat there. No one really pays them much heed. And so it was curious to me where that threshold is, about where it goes from being someone that can stay relatively anonymous despite everyone knowing who they are to someone that needs protection. Now, I suppose some of that might be context as well.
Most of it's dictated for them.
Yeah.
People don't just wake up in the morning and decide that they need it. So in the process of events, maybe you've already been broken into once or twice at the house, and that may be where it starts, where you have security at the house. Maybe you're getting death threats through the door, you're getting bad social media, maybe you have a stalker, anything will make you uneasy. But also cost is the biggest one probably. It costs a lot of money. So a lot of people will only have it when the record label's paying for it, when the production company's paying for it, when the model agency's paying for it. And then in their own time, they don't really have it because of the cost. But, you know, people like Beyonce and the bigger ones, they've all got full-time team, they've got the money, and they know that the risk is there constantly to need security. But by and large, I think a lot of them wait until we're always the last to be put in and everything. Yeah. Because we're an expense that sometimes you wouldn't have if, you know, something's always happened to someone normally before we come along.
I was reading about you working for the sort of UAE royal family.
Yeah.
When they were here. And that's a really, this probably predates all this, but you know, there was all the things about they've all got very heavy protection, and there was that divorce where half of the settlement is for her protection.
Yeah.
You know, particularly in something like that where the counteractive force is something that is well resourced and well motivated.
Yeah.
How do you keep people safe?
It depends what level so Middle East royalty, Saudi, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, they're all similar to a certain extent in their levels of importance, if you like. So the more important they are, they're more likely to have armed police officers.
Yeah.
In the UK, private security is not armed. You can't have any sort of weapon whatsoever.
Yeah.
So we'll have armed, plainclothes armed police officers, but also they may bring police officers from their country with them as well. The level of protection is quite a bit higher than just having private security with someone.
So if they bring their domestic police forces with them, I'd assume, so are they not armed, but or do the domestic police forces sort of, when I say domestic, I mean, you know, from where they reside. Yeah. Do they still sort of play by the same rules as they would at home? Is there some sort of...
No, they try not to. I mean, normally it's led by the UK police anyway, and they're just one or two of their guys will be sort of sat in there observing, really. I don't get overly involved. But no, I mean, every country they go to, they observe that country's laws.
Yeah.
They can't just come over and do what they want, essentially.
Yeah.
But, so it just depends. If you're lower end of the family, you might just get one of us and that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're all the same kind of thing, really.
Yeah. Just to go back to the sort of, you know, Michael Jackson and things of that nature, it's interesting to me with people of that level of fame, and also someone like Michael Jackson, who was famous his entire life.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's kind of similar to how things were for Princess Diana and people like that, of just the logistics of traveling and having people around you always is a huge undertaking. And so when you are sort of employed with the capacity of looking after Michael Jackson, what sort of things would you have to be mindful of and also have to plan for? And what sort of things did you have to plan for?
It's very hard to move him around because you couldn't just go, you know, some of the other A-listers I've been with, if you wanted to go for a walk in the park, put a big jacket on them and just both of you went and did it, you could probably get away with it quite easily. But Michael Jackson, we didn't move him unless it was a scheduled trip and we really had to go on it because it's just impossible. You know, there was, I don't know, 5 or 6 deep of fans outside of the hotel 24 hours a day. Some of them had black cabs on meters constantly so they could jump in and follow us.
That's amazing, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, where they get their money from, I don't know. And some of them followed him all around the world, wherever he went and did exactly the same thing. So
it's scary, really.
It ruins your life.
People don't think about that when they think about... There's a Jonathan Ross saying, he remembers the first time he got someone asked for his autograph and like the feeling of that and the excitement of that. Because there comes to a point when you're sort of that well known that it takes something away from you that you can never get back without sacrificing everything else, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's without anyone in the film, music, model industry at a high level, that's an occupational hazard that you sign up to when you go and decide you're going to do those jobs.
Yeah.
So you've always got to be aware of it. Obviously, some people get bigger than others, but you just have to do things differently. But that's the trade-off.
Yeah,
you can't be on the TV as a singer. You can't be in films as an actor. and not be seen.
Yeah.
So that's the trade-off, unfortunately.
How do they deal with it mentally?
Some better than others.
Yeah.
I mean, look, all these people are people. They're still normal people. They go to the bathroom, they sleep at night, they laugh, they wake up, they get depressed, they have fun, they laugh. They're still fundamentally, they all started off the same way as everyone else.
Yeah.
So they probably a lot more of them have problems than what you realise.
And they're probably more mundane problems than you'd expect as well.
Yeah, well, they still get the whole days of they don't want to go to work, don't feel like it today. You know, it's when they do go to work, it's a lot of effort and a lot of people looking at them, and they have to put 110% into everything they're doing to get through their day's work. And if you're not feeling it that day, you can't just chuck a hoodie on and go to work and do the minimum.
Yeah. Well, it's like those old sort of Hollywood movie stars where their life would be so pronounced in terms of the peaks and troughs of energy. You know, you need to go on stage and perform and also I don't know if people necessarily even take for granted or not that you know, if I go on stage and I perform to 1,000 people, if I'm not performing tomorrow, I've got no energy left. And so the peaks and troughs of, I go on stage, you know, you get fatigued and you go on stage and you perform, and then you come off stage and then you can't sleep because you've got all the adrenaline of performing. And then so the next day, and so it's a real...
Well, we used to get that as bodyguards, we'd get that because you drop them off. It's, you know, you say you're not needed till tomorrow, and then you get home at maybe midnight or 1 a.m, and then you're getting up at maybe 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. to get back in again. But for the first 4 hours, you can't even sleep because your whole day's been so intense. You can't switch off.
And your brain's firing, trying to
and
spot
you're already thinking
things
about the next day as well, and I don't want to get up late, and what do I got to take with me? And it's all stopping you from going to sleep, and you've had 3 hours sleep again before you go again.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's a choice, isn't it? Or a lifestyle, isn't it?
It's a lifestyle, yeah.
It's what it made me think of, and you know, it's relatively pertinent, really. It made me think of two things, and I'll come to them separately. It reminded me a lot of Liam Payne. You know, he went to see a concert of another One Direction member, Niall, and was pretty much exposed. And then there was lots of stuff happening off the back of that online, of people talking about it and taking the mick and and all those sorts of things. And then it seems to me that he was left in a hotel on his own and then shut in a room on his own. And then what happens after that is a bit of a mystery, really. But there was a certain degree of erraticacy, if that's a word. And so it's just, I thought, well, maybe it feels like there was a lack of protection there.
It could have been, but the problem with it is that under that circumstance, you would have been knocked off by then anyway. Yeah. If he had a bodyguard with him the whole time, when he got back to his hotel, he would have turned around and said, I'm in with my mates, we're having a few drinks and doing whatever. Thanks very much, good night. Yeah. You know, you normally wouldn't sit in a personal space like that with people staying in for the rest of the evening and doing whatever they're doing. Yeah. And even if you was, let's face it, if you're sat in the thing out of the way, which you would be somewhere, could you still stop that? So the other thing is, it's probably been about another 60 young people that jumped off balconies this year. Yeah. Doing the same thing, you know, which especially, you know, through the summertime and the holidays, people generally falling off as well because they've been silly and sitting on the side of it and all this stuff. So this is the thing with celebrities, because of who they are and everybody knows them, everything gets so looked into so much, where if you don't know someone and they fall off under the same circumstances, it's almost like it doesn't matter. Yeah, people forget. Exactly, of course, it's still the same thing, yeah. But yeah, I mean, look, it's probably something we'll never know about that. Yeah. But in terms of if he had more people around him, could he have stopped it? Probably not. Yeah. Probably not. And it's difficult to say because we don't know how or why that happened. Yeah.
It seemed to me there was a couple of, I mean, I'm not qualified to even talk about it, but it's just, you know, from what you've seen is there was a lot of, like, he was quite exposed, shall we say, when he was he went to like effectively an arena to see a concert and lots of people videoing, which kind of opened him up to a lot of effectively just online abuse. And then a couple of days later, that you kind of just, the reports are that he was behaving erratically. And so you go, if there was someone around him that's there for his best interest, then would they or would they not have been able to sort of raise a red flag of, you know, something needs a bit of TLC, should we say?
Yeah, I'd say certainly his long-term mental health was in question.
Yeah,
I would think.
Yeah.
But once again, it's all circumstantial. With, he wasn't a kid; he's an adult.
Yeah.
And I've had it before where I've suggested someone's had security with them. I won't say who it was, but they categorically didn't want it. And you can only say a few times, and you have to go, I hope I don't have to say I told you so kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it could have even been that with him. There could have been plenty of people around him that knew that things weren't quite right.
Yeah.
And you can only do a certain amount with that.
I suppose he was very well known, almost sort of not quite Michael Jackson level of fame, maybe, but maybe to certain people, absolutely. And was effectively spent his life on stage or locked in hotel rooms from when he was 16 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
What's your sort of your experience of how that sort of manifests in people? Like, how does that affect people?
Well, first of all, it doesn't need to be like that.
Yeah.
That would have been a little bit of, I mean, obviously you're restricted to be able to run around and do what you want to a certain extent, but that could have been the first sign of there's a problem, to be honest.
Yeah.
If you're always just on stage and in your hotel room and not a lot else.
Yeah.
Certainly all the sort of singers I've looked after, musical artists, although they do stay in their hotel, it's normally for rest because they generally want to be there. And if they want to go out, we'll go out and still do normal things as much as we can. So if you're spending that whole time and never going out, it's a little bit of an indicator.
Do you think some of that is sometimes, I know I'm not specifically talking about Liam, just in general, sometimes those things, particularly if you come off a big talent show or something, that a bit of the security and the locking people away is a bit it's a bit of a play to create the hype around the person.
Probably not, because it doesn't really do that. It doesn't really make a difference most of the time. They go to things where you see them the most. It's all organised events, press releases, events that have been told, where people, they do get, obviously if they just walk out the hotel, they do get, they will get fans and people on the street stopping them and everything else. But in terms of sort of people covering them on a global scale, it won't happen then. So probably not. I just think that it's literally down to the individual. And to go out anytime, you've got to feel like going out. It's very easy to stay in when you're a celebrity. I mean, we find it easy to stay in now. Yeah. So if you're an A-list celebrity, it's even easier to stay in. And I think some are more conscious than that than others. Some possibly, there's nothing wrong with them, but don't realise how much they stay in because of that.
Yeah.
And obviously the mental health side of it, staying in is not great for your mental health anyway.
No, I mean, the other thing that it made me think of Trump and the assassination attempt, because it seemed to me that there was, and again, just purely based off what you see and read and, the relatively vast and overly scrutinized reports of those days, is there seemed to be a relatively clearly missed risk.
Yeah.
And so when you saw those news reports coming in of, someone on the roof effectively with a firearm and managed to take a shot, you as someone who is a professional in sort of protecting people in a similar sort of way, what did that make you think?
Well, first thing you think is how.
Yeah.
How's that even happened? Especially where the guy was laying on the roof, literally opposite. It wasn't like he was 12 miles away and was a good sniper and had a good shot. It was, so you wonder how. But sometimes you can go into all the conspiracy theories, if you want to call it that, and people let it happen because they wanted rid of him, and all these other sort of rumours and reports, and which any of them could be true. I don't know. Let's face it, nobody knows. Yeah. But equally, sometimes it doesn't matter how much protection you have out. You get that one day where where it can just. I mean, was it the Japanese Prime Minister or Deputy Prime Minister got shot?
No, I don't know.
Not that long ago, yeah. And he had, God knows how many security. And sometimes you can just, it's just unfortunate. And everything goes to the benefit of the attacker that day.
Yeah.
By and large, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, everyone's human. And sometimes one just, you could have 12 layers of protection.
Yeah.
But for some reason, something's happened and they genuinely have just managed to slip through, and that's happened. So it also could have been a case of that. I mean, there's a lot of reports about people mentioning this guy's on the roof long before he fired a shot. And again, was that done on purpose, or was that done because people just didn't see it as a thing and just deep down just thought it doesn't matter? Then obviously looking back now going, whoops, maybe I should have.
Yeah. It is interesting as well because, I think the most normal people, and by that I mean just anyone day to day isn't aware of the risks and kind of assume that someone in authority is in charge of things or whatever.
Right, yeah.
And so sometimes if I was there, and I would assume, but if I was there and you see someone on the roof, you'd assume maybe they're a security. Right. You wouldn't necessarily.
Or someone else has seen it, someone else is dealing with it. It's that obvious. I've heard that guy over there mention it already. So someone else, so then they don't, and they kind of, everyone's thinking the same, and ultimately no one's done anything about it now. Yeah.
Until it's, too late. It was a crazy thing. I mean, it's one of those events that I suppose it will be spoken about forever. I remember I was in the States on a trip years ago, and you might have heard about this. I'm sure you would have done. Do you remember? It was probably in the 80s, maybe late 80s, with Princess Anne getting shot through the window in London. Do you remember that? Yeah. And the personal protection, her personal protection, put his hand against the window, against the where the end of the gun is, and they shot through it.
Yeah.
And when you go into a job with someone that is, a royal family or Michael Jackson or whoever it may be, do you go in prepared to basically jump in front of a bullet like that, or do you try not to think about it?
I mean, well, I worked in the Middle East for a long time as well, between Afghanistan and Iraq as a bodyguard. So obviously, when you're in countries like that, it's a given.
Yeah,
you don't ever think you're really going to no one wants to get shot. Let's put it like that.
Yeah,
you look after yourself as much as you do the person you're looking after. But in countries like that, 100%, there's a good chance you're going to get killed. A lot of the guys did. So because of that, it amplifies the fact that you might. No one's exempt. UK, I never had that because I worked in those places. In the UK, I never had that problem personally.
Yeah. You mentioned about, personal protection here and police not carrying weapons. And I suppose it's one of those things that it's sort of like, if one side, if the protection element was escalated, then the attacking element would escalate.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the right way for it to, I mean, my instinct is yes. You'd rather everyone bring in a knife to a knife fight rather than one way or the other. But do you feel like it's done well in terms of people here who are employed to look after people of influence, or the Prime Minister or the royal family or whatever, it's how it's supposed to be? Or do you think
for those people it is, because they have armed police officers, they're well trained and they are armed.
Yeah.
So they're probably the most protected people in the country. And if anyone from other countries of prime ministers or royal families come here on a state visit, they get a few of their people plus all of our people as well. Yeah. So they're well protected. They're probably, by and large, the UK police, the protection teams, probably some of the best in the world.
Yeah.
And not just because they're good at shooting or anything like that. It's always the last, no one wants to do that. But the planning, and even they have extra teams with dogs and other officers will come out to each venue and sniff the whole venue out, and all the amount of planning and stuff they do. And then when you see it on the news, when King Charles jumps out and he's potentially got one bloke with him next to him and maybe a few, but it's not,
there's about 40 off camera.
Yeah, if not more, because there's already been maybe 30, 40 guys in the night before that morning, and once they've checked the whole place out, it gets locked down, so no one can come in and change anything. And he's only have 10 minutes that day.
Yeah,
and that whole 24-hour process or 12-hour process is a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of people. And I don't think sometimes for those guys, obviously when you're looking after Rita or Aura, she's got me and that's it.
Yeah.
There's no sniffer dogs. There's no 24 hours before. So in terms of royal family and Prime Minister, they're probably the best protected in the world.
So with someone like Rita Ora, what's she protecting herself from? Sort of overzealous fans or people with a bit more malice?
Yeah, most of it's that. I mean, sometimes they all go through the stalker phase. I think most of the ones I've been with at some stage have had a stalker, not necessarily when I've been with them, but in their lifetime, we've had some worse, stalkers worse than others. But most of it is just people being a nuisance.
Yeah. A
nice nuisance, so none of them are really hostile. They just get excited.
And I suppose you kind of outsource, if you're a celebrity. I mean, I think about this a lot really with different things, but if someone like a Rita Ora, who your job is to entertain people, you don't want to be the person that has to go, give me a bit of space now. You want to almost protect yourself from that.
They can't anyway, because if it gets physical, then they can't do anything.
Yeah.
It's assault. So, I mean, we're limited to what we can do, but we are licensed.
Yeah.
So we can do a little bit more, not a lot, but we can do a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, that will make sense to me. And I suppose the sort of bodyguard, just the optics of it helps keep some risks at bay as well. I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, quite often I used to diffuse things just by being there.
Yeah,
didn't really have to say anything. Didn't really have to do anything.
Just give him a little look.
It's just it wasn't. It's not such an easy target anymore.
Yeah,
for an opportunist.
Yeah.
So literally straight away it gets dropped. Whatever it might have been they were going to do, it just get dropped.
Yeah. When we were talking a minute ago, it made me think of that when you're talking about the royal family and those things, and I'm sure you've been in lots of environments that are like that. I've done shows for people like royal families and people like that. And the thing that I found in my experience of it is, and you kind of mentioned it a minute or two ago, is that everyone's normal, really. If you go in and do a show with for the royal family or whatever it may be in what is effectively their living room, because as you say, they can't just nip out to the cinema or go to the theatre or go for a walk in the park or Winter Wonderland or whatever it may be. So they end up sort of trying to work out what they can do. And you go into these spaces and everyone's really normal and the kids are playing how they normally would and the adults are gossiping or having a cup of tea or having a glass of wine or whatever it may be. And it seems to me that in those, particularly the hot environments, like where people are at risk, is that almost like your job is to create a bubble around them where they can be as normal as they need to be within their space, and then you create the boundary around them to make sure they're safe. Is that accurate? Would you say?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, you just keep an eye out for them.
Yeah,
and you also advise them where to go. If they go to the bathroom, maybe some of them, I'd have to clear the bathroom out before I could go in there.
Yeah,
especially if it's female, because I can't go in the bathroom with a female.
Yeah.
So I'd have to make sure everybody was out and then knowing that she's in there on her own, so no one's going to do anything when I can't be with her. So there's ways of managing stuff like that, but it's just looking out for them. Yeah. And not just saying maybe their personal belongings and sometimes people they got with them as well, you might keep an eye on.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking briefly about Cobham and places like that. And it just reminded me because of Amanda Holden, but I went to see the Palladium Panto one day when Simon Cowell was in the audience, and they waited until the audience were in, and then lights go down and he comes in, and then just before the interval they keep everyone in their seats and he goes out through the back door. And I suppose, that's an environment where Amanda Holden's there, so obviously people are going to have more interest in Simon. And I think his son, Eric, was super young then. It was probably 5 years ago, maybe slightly longer. What's the process? If you're with someone like, I don't know, Michael Jackson or whatever it may be, and they want to go and do something, what's the process for getting them to be able to have any sort of sense of normality and go and see a show in the West End?
Well, we did exactly that anyway. We went to see Mary Poppins with him and his 2 children.
Yeah.
Which at the time I couldn't really work out how he was good. I wasn't in charge of that job, by the way. I couldn't really work out how he was going to do it. So we got there and we got him around the back and took him into sort of a safe room, if you like. And they said, right, we're going to take him in when the lights are down.
Yeah.
Which is what we did. And it worked fine. We had a security guard on each end of the row that he was sitting in. They had a whole empty row for him. No one really noticed him. But they weren't that smart on getting him out.
Yeah.
And the lights come on.
You had to run.
It's a mess. Even the actors stopped. Really? The show stopped.
I was thinking this, right? Because, when I can always remember, I spoke to Debbie, my auntie, about when they were in the West End. And she'd say, they'd get a whisper in their ear and say, so-and-so's in, like, oh, this movie star's in, or this actor's in or whatever. So they knew sometimes when people are in. When it's someone that is that famous, someone that is, Frank Sinatra, Paul McCartney, Michael Jackson, those sorts of big names. Would you just not tell anyone?
No,
would it all be NDA'd and
not even NDA'd? You just don't tell the theatre you come in, even if, because they're not going to not accommodate Michael Jackson.
Yeah,
everybody wants someone like that in their place. So you might get a guy who turns up 2 hours before. Yeah. But they make sure that they've got hold of the theatre manager. They tell them exactly what they want, which we always used to get, obviously.
Yeah.
And then they tell them that you don't tell any of your staff. And then that window's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. They don't really want to tell anyone because they feel bad now because you're still stood next to him and you stay with him until he turns up. And you just don't tell anyone.
It is, and I suppose it takes 2 minutes before one person sees and then everyone knows immediately.
Yeah, well, back then it's a bit different. I remember when 2006 we did that job. I think I was in the Sun newspaper.
Yeah.
I was on MTV and the BBC News, and that was it.
Yeah.
Because there was no social media or anything else. These days now with social media and camera phones, you know, it's almost impossible to do probably what we did back then, because it only takes one person to see him through a window or something and take a picture, and that's it. Yeah. The whole world knows instantly.
Have you seen that Ed Sheeran documentary where it's called Singer-Songwriter, and it's about when he was putting together his album Divide, and he made it with Benny Blanco, who was the producer, and Benny Blanco doesn't fly, and he tells this story about his first ever flight. They had huge turbulence, and he was like, you know, normally you're supposed to look at the cabin steward and they look relaxed, and I was looking at the cabin stewards and they were nearly crying. And he was like, it was just a bad time, like, you know, it rarely happens. Got his second flight and the same thing happened, so he was like, I'm just not flying anymore. Yeah. So they had to go from New York to London, or London to New York, I'm not quite sure which way around it was, and they were they got a cruise ship. They got on the Queen Mary 2, who, interestingly, my other half was on it as a dancer when they were on it. And they got given this huge crew section that they basically masked off and didn't let anyone in. So they had this whole sort of cornered off section below deck. So and I assume that's almost like a protection thing. All of that stuff is planned out of how you keep them safe, particularly in an environment like that where you're trapped with the same people for 10 days, you know, and all you need is one person to go, Ed Sheeran's over there. And
that would have been really easy, because you'd be given that, allocated that space, and he can move around in that space as much as he wants without you even being with him. Yeah. So that would have been a really easy job. But my advice would have been get a private jet, mate. Yeah. Because it's a lot quicker, and you don't have to worry about anyone else on it. Yeah, because it's just not. As a security, if you've got 10 days to waste to do that, and I don't mind having a sale. Do you know what I mean? If you've got to pay me for 10 days of doing nothing, because that'd have been a very easy job for me. Once he's in that space, I wouldn't really have to worry about it for 10 days. I'd have been in the gym for 10 days.
Have you ever seen that thing with Daniel Radcliffe when he was on Broadway, and he wore the same outfit every day, so the paparazzi couldn't sell the photos?
Yeah.
If you are just a hypothetical situation, but if you got hired to advise or to protect someone who was just breaking through, and so they've got no idea about these sorts of things and the risks that being in the public eye could create, or things that could or couldn't happen, what would you, if you were to give like a list of, this is how you look after yourself? You've just all of a sudden, you know, like McIntyre when he did the Raw Variety and 30 million people watched it, whatever it was, and overnight he was famous from complete anonymity prior. Excuse me. What would you advise them?
The difficult thing with it is that McIntyre thing, for instance, from going from nothing to everything, to manage when you're everything all of a sudden, to manage that costs money. Yeah. Because you can't go on the bus, can't go on the train. Yeah. You know, all these things you can't do anymore. If you haven't got money, you're going to struggle. Yeah. And people often say, celebrities, we're too good to go on the tube, they're too good to go on a bus. Trust me, they wouldn't mind going on a bus. Yeah. They're quite happy to jump on a tube. They can't do it. It's not safe for them to do it. So if you go overnight, it's difficult for me to say, because you're probably not going to have the money to do it anyway. Yeah. If you gradually move into that space, and you'll work it out yourself. Yeah. Because what might work for you might not work for someone else. You know, it's not a clear-cut thing for every celebrity how it works. And that can depend on where you live already. Do you live out in the country already? Well, if you do, that's probably going to be helpful. Yeah. If you live in an apartment in central London, already your situation is probably going to be slightly different. So, and what's your normal daily routine outside of your job? If you're someone who doesn't do too much, that's probably fine. If you're someone who was used to doing everything, then you have to look at that again. Yeah. So it just depends, but it does. You can't, to be famous with no money is pointless. Yeah. All these Love Island people who want to go on and Big Brother and, you know, for a couple of weeks of fame or wherever long, I don't know watch these things, but and they come off.
I thought I had you as a Love Island guy.
Yeah, no, I might be a little bit too old, I was thinking. It's a little bit too old. You know, they come off semi-famous in the UK, but they don't understand that if you're not making money from it, or if you don't do something with it, that fame goes within 6 months. Yeah. But also, and if it doesn't and gets bigger, then you need money to be able to look after yourself and your family properly. So the famous side of it, to be honest with you, I see fame as a business.
Yeah.
It's a tool to make money, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's a nice tool because what you're doing is hopefully making people happy at the same time. So that's the nice bit about it. But if you're just worried about the tool to make money but not making the money, absolute waste of time.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was, probably 5 or 6, and my auntie and uncle were still on telly. And I remember being in my nan and granddad's front garden, and they were just watering the plants or doing some gardening or something, me and my granddad. And we're like teenagers coming past and asking where they were. They were asking where my Uncle Paul was. So my granddad would be like, there's no magic here today. And, they were quite sort of well versed in how to handle people. And, most people in my experience are friendly anyway. But you kind of don't think about that. You don't think about, I even, sort of post Strictly, me and every single person in my family were getting messages from people that saw Debbie on Strictly and asking, just all kinds of stuff. Or we should be sat in the theatre and people would put up pictures of the back of her head, where they were sat behind her.
Yeah.
And I find it fascinating because it's another side. It's not the other side, but it's certainly another side of something that you need to think about, I suppose. And that's, where you're...
It's an infringement, for not just for you, for your family, for someone's wife, someone's husband, someone's child, or even like you said, nephew, whatever. It's an infringement. The bigger you get, it's an infringement on your family, and the deeper it goes into your family as well, depending on how famous you get.
Yeah.
So it's not, you've got to think about that a little bit when you're doing it, because it's not just looking after yourself.
Yeah.
And certainly children, when they're growing up, do you want your children subjected to that at an early stage? If you don't, how are you going to manage that? Ultimately, they will be, but if they're adults, then they can kind of start managing it themselves.
Yeah.
But it's a lot to think about. It's not as easy as what people think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember those videos of, the Beckhams when the kids were really young and people banging on the window. And actually, I had this conversation with Katie Price the other day about it, because obviously her older children were very much like on the telly show and exposed to the public, and everyone knows who they are. And then the younger children, I think she's clearly gone through that journey where she's gone, just the risk isn't worth the reward for them. There's sort of value in the anonymity. It's an interesting sort of dynamic. Just to talk about the tube and things like that, it's a completely different tack, like a non sort of celebrity tack. But you walk down Westminster Bridge these days and you see people doing 3-card game, which I've been telling people in my tour show for 10 years that you can't win. Like there'll be people in the audience, so to speak, who are part of it, who are winning money, and there'll be other people in there picking pockets. There'll be someone there, looking out for the police. So then, if the police come, they shout and they'll peg it. But they're very good at creating that environment. How, if you're someone particularly in London or somewhere that's a bustling city, or Barcelona or New York, how do you go about protecting yourself from getting your watch stolen or your phone stolen? Or
first of all, you've got to be open to the fact it happens. The amount of people that I know, it doesn't happen here, it won't happen there, it won't happen to me. So if you're not open to the fact it happened, that's going to be difficult for you to come up with a plan of what you would do if it was going to happen. But you've also got to be mindful of what's going on around you, and people aren't anymore these days, especially with phones and earphones in their ears, because that's all stuff that can, if someone attacks, and that's when you realise it's too late, because now you are talking about fighting people off, and most people won't be able to do that.
Yeah.
And especially if you're talking about expensive watches and stuff like that, people will cut your arms off for them now.
Really?
They're not, they just have battery disc cutters. They just take you. They won't do it, but they're show you that that's what they will do if you don't take it off. So they don't care. They beat you up. They're, men and women get beaten up now, especially in this town. It's pretty lawless when it comes to watch theft now in London.
Yeah. Is watch theft a big thing?
Massive.
Yeah, because obviously you see people getting their phone stolen, or someone stood texting on the tube just as the door shut and someone yanks their phone.
And that's the thing. The phones is people don't generally get beaten up because it does get done like that.
Yeah.
So then they've gone, or they come up on a push bike or those electric bikes straight out of hand, and they're gone. So people don't really get beaten up for phones. It's just an inconvenience. Yeah. But that happens. It's rife. But the watches, people are getting beaten up. And some worse than others as well. Sometimes stabbed, sometimes acid attacks.
Really?
But the problem with it is they know that the police aren't going to do anything. So it's like literally anyone can go and do that and pretty much get away with it now.
Really?
And even if they're trying to clamp down on it, they're not doing a very good job because it's just constant now. And to the extent the price of watches have come down, that shows the problem with it. People, a lot of people I know had Lawless watches and now got Apple watches or less.
Apple Watch, the famously easiest watch to steal as well. I know that just from magic, it just
comes off. But they just don't wear them, or they've still got them in the safe at home, and that's it. So that just goes to show, whether you believe that's happening or not. The fact that people happen to do things like that, it must be because boy, you're not wearing your watch anymore.
Yeah. How do you? I mean, I had my phone stolen, and it was. I think my experience is probably a pretty common one. Of it so obvious what was happening retrospectively, And I had two kids come up, and I talk about this on stage. Is I had two kids come up to me that were, the biggest red flag with it was they were probably 8, maybe, give or take, broken English, probably fake broken English, but because it makes you lean in and try and work out what they're trying to say. And I was at a bar on the South Bank, and they came up with a menu, which I don't even know if it was a menu from that bar, but the implication was that it was, and asking for if you can give them £1. And then you look at them, you go, you're both wearing Hugo Boss jumpers, but nothing, like my head, like the ADHD pattern recognition in me was like, there's something wrong here, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah. It all happens quite quick as well.
And I had a puppy on my lap. I had Bella on my lap. And so she's here. They get into my face and she starts barking. And so your attention goes to the dog and within 3 seconds they're gone. And it's irrelevant whether or not you've got Find My iPhone on, right? Because if I found those kids again, they would have shipped it off to someone else. They would have passed it to someone walking the other way, I suppose. And actually, interesting, I had a phone stolen one time from a skip that I didn't know was in a box, but I cleared a room out and I had a phone in it. And then someone started ringing people that I knew from, somewhere like Latvia or somewhere Eastern Europe. And I looked on, the Find My iPhone and it was on there. Like you could see where it was. But they, like when stuff gets stolen, it often just gets sent to different places. To go back to the question that I was going to ask you is, putting things up like, this is where I am, or social media, I suppose that presents another risk. So is that something that you have to advise people on?
You never put nothing up where you are.
You
do it after. It's a given. It's not even a thing to think about. Especially with A-list celebrities, I would never, we do make sure they don't, but they're not. No one. You don't have to tell them that. That's normal life. You don't say, I'm in wherever I am now, because within 5 minutes you won't be able to get out of the place. So everyone does it at least 20 minutes after, or not at all.
So who have you looked after? So Michael Jackson and Rita Ora, Bella Hadid, I read.
Yeah, Bella Hadid, Kendall Jenner, Dizzy Rascal, Halsey. Charlie XCX.
Have you had anything happen with any of them where you've had to intervene? No,
I don't get problems.
So I guess that's a testament to it, right? It's a planning job rather than
that's why if you plan it, you minimise the problems. But even when it's a problem, I just don't get problems.
So what's the process? Is it if they have a big arena tour or a big show or something, or a red carpet event, and they want to make sure that they can do what they need to do without worrying about external risk? Is that effectively when you come in?
All those people, pretty much all those people, like Bella and Kendall, I'll be with them the whole time. They're in London. So
you meet them at the airport
and take them back to the airport. So I do that with them. Jackson was the same. Dizzy, I just used to do it on certain occasions. Halsey was pretty much the same airport to airport. Rita in the UK was as and when, but we did do a bit of Europe, which we were in Europe with all the time. Naomi Campbell was as and when. Do you know what? I can't remember after people. I've missed people.
Well, I suppose you're there sort of in such work mode. You're not there. You're not, there to enjoy yourself. So you're kind of your eyes on the job, I suppose.
I wanted to get paid. That's all I wanted to do. It's just a day's work for me. By the time I got to celebrities, I think I'd already been a 10-year Bodyguard for 8 or 10 years.
Yeah.
And I've done everything from, you know, the Middle East to working with high net worth diplomats. You know, you're not going to get a bigger celebrity to work for than Michael Jackson. Yeah. Which was one of my first jobs in London, so it kind of spoiled the rest of my career.
The novelty was gone.
Yeah, it's gone instantly, yeah.
Like,
so
Rita,
I loved being a bodyguard at the time, and that was my job, and I didn't care whether you was a celebrity or whether you was high net worth or whether you was royalty. That's all I worried about. So, and ultimately I went to, near the end, because like any job, the novelty wears off. You know, I finished it all in 2018, I think it was, because I just had enough of it.
Yeah.
It's just like anything, you can do too much of something, and it was time for a change.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just used to go to work to get paid like everyone else.
Yeah. What was it that sort of wore you out with it? Was it the travel or the time away? Or was it just not being able to have an amount
of people?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what? The easiest way I can describe, I've grown out of it.
Yeah.
My life had moved on then, and I was still doing it.
Yeah.
And certainly with film work and the clothing and everything else, my life was getting bigger and bigger outside of the security world, and I just didn't fit into it anymore. I'd just grown out of it, and I had to leave it behind.
Were you trying to juggle sort of acting and creating a clothing line and all of the things that you were passionate about and cared about with effectively a relic from your previous life? Is that
kind of, yeah, it's dragging me down slightly, to be honest, because once I actually decided I wasn't going to do that anymore, everything opened up twice as big for me. So it was something, not only that, it was stages where I was taking the people to restaurants the week before I was eating in. Do you know what I mean? I just thought, I'm done here. I can't do this anymore. I'm just literally, I've grown out of it. I had a good time. I made a lot of money, met a lot of people, been all over the world, you know, done all the different, I did ship security for a number of years with the pirates out in Somalia.
Wow.
I experienced loads of real good stuff and had good fun.
I mean, Rita feels a bit low risk compared to
That's why I've never worried in the UK. I've never bothered in the UK. But yeah, so I just thought, it's just I'm out of here now. I can't do this anymore. You know.
Yeah, the thing I guess that is the most interesting part to me is really the sort of like the juxtaposition between a life of needing protection and a life of not needing protection. You know, my experience is a few things, which is, you know, when I've been around people when I was younger, and it's half the reason I fell in love with showbiz actually was the masses of people and making people's lives happy. And people only care and are only invested in you enough to follow you around the world in a cab that's on a meter. If you've touched them emotionally, you know, if you're important to different parts of their life, and they feel like they have a sense of ownership over you because they feel like they know you. So that's the positive of it, is that you are making people's lives better, or certainly entertaining them, or the escapism and those sorts of things. So that's half the reason I fell in love with showbiz. And so those sorts of things. But equally, you know, if I was ever at Strictly, you'd be in a green room, which is effectively a bar, and it would be private enough. Like everyone was in there just being normal people. You know, everyone from, you know, minor members of the royal family to people from telly to the BBC Director General, just being there having wine and, you know, just playing loud music, and it just is what it is. And equally, you know, where I was in a restaurant a couple of days ago, and you have John Terry on one table, and then, you know, someone from a band on another table, whatever. Like, and there's no need for security there because it's so sort of normal, and people are normal in their day-to-day lives. And then there's a flip side of it to being in environments where they do need that. And I'm really curious as to what that is. I don't know what, you know, I suppose there's an old Marilyn Monroe thing about, you know, Marilyn Monroe could go on a underground and no one knows who she is, or she could switch it on and everyone knows who it is. And so it's, I guess it's just, I'm trying to work out at what point people need.
A lot of it's where you are. It's an easy one to answer, really. It's down to the people who are in the room.
Yeah.
If you're going to go to a concert, or you're singing in a concert, and everyone's paid 80 quid a ticket, 90 quid a ticket, they're going to want to be all over you.
Yeah.
If you're sitting in a restaurant, people are going to look, maybe the odd person might come up to the table. But by and large, everyone's gone out for dinner.
Yeah.
And that's really what they're worried about, is going out for dinner. So they might look and go, oh, look, I mean, Michael Jackson's an extreme case, so he's probably not a good example, but, oh, look, Rita Ora's over there in the corner, and everyone will go like that. And then it's kind of gone.
There'll be a bit of a...
Yeah, of course. And it's kind of gone. You might get the odd person pops up there, but it's all to do with the people you got around you.
Yeah. I also suppose, you know, if Rita Ora's at a concert of hers, there's also like an environment thing of, if you have an opportunity to talk to Rita, or it makes you as an audience member, it's something to talk about to the people that, and so I guess
they're fans, aren't they? They follow them religiously and buy, clothes, T-shirts with her face on it. And so everybody in that stadium, given the choice, given the chance, would talk to her.
Yeah.
When you're in a restaurant, 75% of people aren't bothered. They're worried about their dinner. They'll have a look, but they don't care if they talk to her or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? And that's the difference.
And, people have got their friends as well. They don't want it. They would rather...
They'd tell everyone they was in a restaurant with her. They'd tell everyone that. But, a lot of people aren't bold enough to go up to the table and don't care enough to go up to the table. They're happy that they've just seen her in real life, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, yeah. Do you keep in touch with anyone from those days?
Not really, not by and large. No, I mean, they weren't friends. They're people I worked for.
Yeah.
I could.
Yeah, it's like, I suppose, when you leave any job, I suppose.
Yeah, I could, but I don't. I'm so far out of it now. I'm 6-7 years out of it now, and I've got zero interest.
Yeah, yeah.
To be honest, I've got no reason to.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you doing with yourself post personal protection of celebs?
I went to film school. I went to acting school because I wanted to be an actor. That was my reason for changing.
Did you always know you wanted to do that? No.
Well, kind of. 2010, I did a film in Morocco with Matt Damon and Paul Greengrass. Where I kind of got asked to go out there to play a US Special Forces soldier. Yeah. And at the time, it was about a part of the Iraq War that I was actually involved in. Yeah. With the military. So I was kind of a good person to go out to do it. So we did that. And I just remember we had this massive night shoot where we was blank firing. It was hot because it was in Morocco. Yeah. It looked like an Iraqi village. They paid a fortune for the whole village to move out for a few weeks so we could film there. Wow. And I just remember thinking, this is something I could do later. Yeah. Because this is exactly like the real thing, but you ain't got the pressure of anyone shooting back at you, which was a little bit of a novelty for me at the time. But I was still very much a bodyguard then. I did another 8 years as a bodyguard. I worked on Sherlock Holmes after that. And a few other bits and pieces, and I kind of put it down because I was getting into it quite quickly, and you can't really be famous or known to the public as a bodyguard. I mean, I ended up being known anyway because of the celebrities I worked with, but at the time before that, I wasn't. So I put it all down and left it, but knowing that one day I'd pick it up. Yeah. And then when I started getting that feeling of not wanting to be a bodyguard anymore, I always think, what do I want to do next? I only do stuff I enjoy doing. Yeah. So I thought about that. I thought I wanted to be an actor. And that's pretty much how it worked. I woke up one morning and thought, I'm not a bodyguard anymore. I'm going to be an actor. And this happened that quick, really.
It's kind of a testament, really, to... I was talking to someone about this the other day on here, of if you leave, if it's something you don't want to do anymore, and you sort of... how do I word what I'm trying to say? You stop doing it, it leaves space for something you do want to do, and something else fills it. It gives you a much more successful and fulfilling life, really, because you're doing something you love doing and want to be doing, rather than feeling, married to something.
I don't feel like I work. I mean, I still have a private security company, which I have very little to do with, but I still own it. Yeah. Because obviously, it's silly not to have that. So I have the clothing brand as well, and then obviously my interest in film with acting. Yeah. So I have 3 things to do. All of those things, I come and go. Filming's a bit different because obviously I'm halfway through a movie at the moment. Yeah. So we've just finished filming in Ibiza. We've got 2 weeks in London after Christmas. So I'm strapped down to that. Yeah. But everything else, I'm not really strapped down to. If I don't want to go to work, I don't go. If I do, I do. If I want to go to that country visit, I do anything I want every day. Yeah. So I don't feel like it's work, even though to everyone else looking in, it might be. I just, this is a day's work for me, what I'm doing with you now. Yeah. I go after this, I go and have a coffee and dinner and go home. Yeah. It's not a big deal.
Well, there's that thing of, there's a saying that goes, do something you love and you never work a day in your life.
Yeah, it's true.
But it's I think it's less than that. I think it's, we'll do something you love and you'll work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Because it's not work, you see. That's why, because it's not work.
Because you can throw yourself into it. Yeah. And also, the thing with it, it's the same thing with my career too, is I struggle to not work because what I'm doing, what I'm creating is fulfilling me more than not doing that. Yeah. And it's probably the same with you, is you've got stuff that you're passionate about, and so you want to be doing it rather than not be.
Yeah, and it's just literally, if it doesn't feel like work, you're going to do it. If you enjoy being in the pub and playing snooker, if you could do that every day and be paid, you'd be in the pub every day for sure, 100%. It's just, unfortunately, because you're a carpenter or you're a plumber or whatever you might be in life, you can only go in the pub on a Friday and a Saturday. But if you can make what it is you really enjoy doing, playing football at the weekend, and make it into your job, then why would you not always be doing it? Why would you sit home and do nothing? You wouldn't.
I'll tell you a story about someone that's all about being in the pub where you shouldn't be, who I'm sure this story is Googleable, but I don't know how hush-hush it is. So I'm going to not say any names. But they were a pop star from a band, and they were doing a panto, a big budget panto as well, maybe 4 years ago. And they missed their cue to come on stage for something. Long and short of it was the producer found them around the corner in a Wetherspoons in costume in the middle of the show, and obviously sacked them on the spot. And the problem they had was
drink problem.
Well, it was a drink problem, but as a production, like, how do you tell the audience that they just got him in the pub? So they had to basically go, he's not doing the rest of the run for, like, basically personal problems or illness or whatever. But they wouldn't. They had to sack him because he left the show during the show to go to the pub in his costume, dressed as Aladdin or whatever it was.
Yeah. I mean, you need to be drunk to do that.
Well, yeah, that's true. Well, you say that until you see the paycheck and you go, well, yeah, I could probably dress up as Aladdin in some tights for a couple of weeks. Yeah. What's the ambition for you? What do you want to do next?
Carry on with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Expand the clothing brand as much as I can, which equally grows with me, with the films and acting, because obviously the brand's my name. So
who are you serving? Like, with the talk to us about the clothing brand. So what sort of clothing is it, and who are your clientele?
So it's called Simon Newton London. We started it last year. You can find it at simonnewtonlondon.com, which is all online. We're not in stores or anything at the moment. Well, I don't know. Jewelry's out on stores these days, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's kind of a street style clothing brand at the moment, which we do plan to sort of push out to do everything in the long run. Heavily male orientated at the moment. Again, we do expect to do female, but bomber jackets are the main thing we do, which is something I used to wear when I was doing security quite often. And t-shirts. We've got tracksuits.
Is that you're wearing? Is they
that is one there.
I really liked it. Actually,
that's my same as the one t-shirt I've got on now as well. Yeah, it's
really brand.
Cool. So we've got tracksuits coming out after Christmas, and they're going to be super nice.
So what's the process of creating product lines like that?
It's a big one.
Is it?
It's costing. I mean, obviously with clothing, you've got to pay for everything before you sell it.
Yeah.
So, and it's not just what you're making and the items you've got to sell. Your marketing's a big thing.
Yeah.
And people overlook the marketing sometimes. It's probably more important than anything else, to be honest with you, because if you've got the right marketing team, you can sell bags of air.
Yeah.
So it's a big expense, but at the same time, where we've done well is because in terms of sourcing factories in China and places like Turkey, that can be, cost a lot of money, especially if you get it wrong. Sampling can cost you a lot of money if it keeps coming back wrong. And we kind of nailed all that in one hit. And the quality, that's the probably biggest testament to the brand at the moment, is we've never had a return because someone's not liked it or the quality's not been what they thought. If anything, the quality has been better than they thought. The only returns we've ever had is because someone wants a bigger size or a smaller size. And we sell quite consistently. The other thing we do, which is quite telling for the brand as well, is we haven't got loads of products out there at the moment, but people, when they buy for the first time, they're buying one of everything. And bearing in mind, I even sometimes think I wouldn't do that. I'm ungrateful people do. But when it's a new brand and you can't go into a store to have a quick look at it first and all that, you'd normally buy something, wouldn't you, just to check it out. But they don't. They buy one of everything.
That's amazing.
We've had reoccurring customers, although we haven't got loads of different products out. So it's all looking very, promising. At the same time, we've had product placement in 2 films. Which both haven't come out yet, what I'm doing at the moment.
So do you have to go and fight for those contracts, or do the people come to you and say, I really like this, or we'd love it to be in the film?
Both of those that, both of them have actually come to me. But of course, I link that in with the acting world anyway, because I'm around the right people.
I suppose it's kind of what you were saying about, fame being a business, really. It's the same thing with anything, I think, is if you create something that is fulfilling people and serving a need and, making their lives better, even in whatever sense it may be, whether it be, an hour of their time sat watching a film or or clothing they wear, whatever. You have to empower people to be more of what they would like to be, I think.
Yeah.
But if you do that, then people come back, and that's how everything grows, whether it be a personal profile or it be a product line or anything in between, I think.
My audience demographic with the clothing at the moment is between 40 and 55.
Yeah.
Which is a lot older than what I expected because it's bomber jackets and T-shirts and stuff like that. But that's where we're getting the most sales, mainly a lot of male. We've had a few female, a lot of male. But with the product placement with the movies, once that comes out, they both come out. One's roughly April next year, I think, and 1 September. Yeah. That will also lower the age of people purchasing the stuff. So we've been in Gracia magazine, we've been in Vogue magazine, we've been in Men's Health, we've been in Luxury Lifestyle.
How do you go about getting it featured in those
things? You just have to pitch.
Yeah. Just knock on the door and say, we've got this.
So whoever the journalist is for those magazines who deals with that kind of thing, you just have to pitch to them, and it's just pot luck whether they go, it's good enough or what they want.
How have you been pitching it? Have you been pitching it just, this is a product line that I'd like you to talk about, or is there anything newsworthy in it that you... I guess if it's in a film, you can go to the journalist and go, this is the product that's in the film. Or this is, I suppose if someone well-known's worn something, you can go, look who this person was.
Yeah, I mean, I've gifted a lot of celebrities because obviously I know a lot of people in that respect, so I've gifted a lot of people like that. But the honest answer is I don't know, because I have a good PR team. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
It's the same as my marketing team. I don't get involved in that. I oversee it all. I make sure that I'm getting out of it what I need to be getting. Yeah. But Laura, who does my PR, who set this up as well, she does everything for me. She's very heavy on the clothing side of the PR. And my understanding of how it works is they just pitch out and it's up. You can't guarantee pickup. Yeah, that's the thing. But to catch the journalist's eye, you maybe mix a bit of security in there with the film that you're doing at the moment, with how the clothing brand's getting on. Yeah, just enough to get them to read into it a bit more and go, actually, we're doing an article on this in a magazine.
Yeah, and I think with these things, with a lot of things, is relationships are a lot of it. She'll have her relationship.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And can sort of open a door to even having the conversation.
Sometimes you can hit lucky on maybe they haven't got a lot of content at that time, or they've got a lot of the same content and yours is different to what they've got. I know I didn't have the clothing brand at the time, but over COVID, we did very well on PR. Yeah, with the transitioning from security into acting, because everything was so COVID heavy, people wanted
something else.
Something different, and because obviously there wasn't a lot going on in the world, we scooped right up with PR and COVID because people were happy just.
And it's good on both sides because everyone else was sitting there looking for something to read.
Exactly, that's what I mean. It was exactly. So it's loads of different factors as to why things get picked up. You can send it to the wrong journalists, not really their thing, and sometimes they send it to someone who it is, or they won't do anything with it at all.
My experience of PR is it's better to do less better than spray and pray. Like you can easily send an email to 100 people and it not hit any of them. It's better to find one, know what they're after, know what they talk about, and then go, this is how I fit your thing.
We go international as well, so the clothing brands international. We sell all over the world. So in terms of magazines and sort of PR coverage, we will do a lot in the States still. We've done some in Canada. We've done, I can't remember, a lot of non-English speaking. I've done podcasts and interviews where I've had to have a
interpreter.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because in Mexico I was a big hit at one stage. I didn't have a clue what it was asking me really, but it went down well.
That's great.
Maybe that's why. But
so with the clothes, do you design it from the ground up? Do you go, this is what I want to make, this is what I want it to look like?
Yeah. So I have a team of people, obviously, because there's two things with designing clothing, and you've got to design what you're buying and what you're looking at, because obviously if people don't look at what they like, they won't buy it. But equally, it could be the best looking thing. If it doesn't fit properly, that's a problem as well. So there's two. You got to design.
That's when you get returns as well.
Exactly, and then it can actually put the company under almost if you get too many returns. So there's two stages to it where you got to get something was appealing, the right quality materials. The colours, obviously the logo from day one, all that's all done by me. Everything's done by me in that respect. But then I have a guy who 3 years London School of Fashion, etc., who then takes that away, everything I give him, and he puts it into a thing called a tech pack. And a tech pack is what you send to the factory to get the item done. Now, we know normally inside leg, collar, chest, seat. Yeah. You know, there's about 1,000 more measurements on top of that and if you tweak the shoulder slightly, it pulls it at the bottom left-hand corner of the seat. Do you know what I mean? So if you don't know what you're doing, and again, that can then cause a problem with sampling because samples get sent back because they do exactly what you tell them to do.
Yeah.
So you need someone properly really to do that. I haven't got time to retrade and reskill. You can't. I've got too much going on. You know, so. As long as you get the right people, it's about putting people together.
It's the who, not the how, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's better to find good people and pay them what they are. Let me just say that again. But it's find good people and pay them for their services than try and work it out and iron those things out yourself. So.
Yeah, and you can't. I've got 3 things going on at the moment, essentially 3 business. I can't physically do it, even if I wanted to, even if I knew how to. I can't do it. It's impossible. So you have to let bits go.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm still over responsible for everything, which I try not to think about.
Yeah.
Too much.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I'll ask you one more thing. So I heard you talking about, we'll go back to Michael Jackson and talking about when you went shopping in the middle of the night on Oxford Street.
Yeah, we went to Topshop, which is now closed, but...
It's gone online, actually. Funny about that.
Yeah. So they closed it for us. I say closed it. I opened it for us at like 12 o'clock midnight, 12:30, something like that.
Yeah.
Just so we had free reign of being able to walk around and pick what he wanted, really.
Yeah.
Which was great. I mean, it was a late finish, but
did you get to try anything on yourself? Just go, I've got this whole shop to myself, or do you have to just sort of?
Well, it didn't matter to me. I'd go and Topshop anytime I want.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
It weren't that much of a novelty, to be honest. Topshop's not the most expensive. If it's Tom Ford or something, and I might be a bit more excited.
Michael Jackson going to Topshop on Oxford Street is just hilarious to me, objectively.
Yeah.
It's just such a random... It's like you wouldn't think. It's just
I don't know why or how that happened, but it did. We was going to the World Music Awards. That's what the visit was for. He got an award, and I think he was meant to wear the Topshop clothes.
Yeah,
but he didn't. But that's what he was meant to wear.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you so much for your time. I've had a really, really interesting and broad conversation from everything from, the behind the scenes of protecting people to the clothing. So thank you so much for your time. And I wish you all the very best with the films that are coming out. And I'm looking forward to seeing them. And the clothes genuinely look amazing. So congrats.
Thanks.
So that was Simon Newton, who it kind of fits the scope of this podcast by association, really. I thought it's an interesting other look at the parts of being in the public eye that you don't normally get to look at. There's a huge logistical job, I suppose, in travelling and keeping people safe and organising things of people with huge big names and huge profiles. He was relatively tight-lipped about certain details of it, and I think that comes with the territory, really. You know, his job is to not provide extra risk, I suppose. But it was insightful anyway, and interesting to hear his thoughts on things. He has quite a stark view of the world and the risks of, being in London or with a big name celebrity or whatever. But he also has seen the top level of celebrity up close, and the lessons that he's taken from that is clearly taken into his personal life now and his job now, doing the clothing line and those sorts of things. Like there was things that he said about fame and it being a business and those sorts of things that he's clearly mirrored in his job now and his businesses. I found it fascinating, found it interesting. And to get a slight sort of a peek behind the curtain with what it was like for Michael Jackson being in London in a time that he hadn't really been in the UK ever, or Rita Ora or Bella Hadid, or all of these real high profile people that, have risks that we wouldn't even think of. It was interesting. And I enjoyed the conversation. So yeah, that was Simon Newton, and I hope you enjoyed it too.